All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being here with us today. We are having a very special announcement today. I am so happy to be joined by, as I always say, the best federal delegation a mayor can have. Our U.S. Senators, Senator Ben Cardin, Chris Van Hollen, our Congressman Nfume, Congressman Rupersberger, my current congressman and my future congressman, and Congressman Sarbanes. We are also joined here today by our Police Commissioner Michael Harrison, Director of Neighborhood Safety Engagement Shante Jackson. We also have recipients of what we are here to: Living Classrooms, Life Bridge, Maryland Gun Violence Prevention Coalition, and Shock Trauma. I want to start off today by thanking everyone for being here, but for most importantly, by thanking our incredible federal delegation, each and every one of you. You all have time and time again demonstrated your steadfast commitment to the people and this really fighting for the issues that matter to our residents on the national stage and bringing dollars home to help us build a brighter, safer future for all Baltimoreans. When I released my comprehensive violence prevention plan last summer, we made it very clear that we were going to need unprecedented levels of coordination and mutual support across all levels of government. Members of our federal delegation were there with me when we launched that plan and are here together to again highlight this strong partnership that we all have. We cannot and will not advance our vision for an equitable and sustainable approach to public safety without centering our communities and tackling violence as a public health issue. The federal earmarks, or what's the new term that
Earmarks.
Earmarks, yes, sir. Yesterday I had a member of Congress give me the new fancy term while I was in D.C. Congressionally directed funding, better known as earmarks, that we are talking about today total over $7 million towards implementing that vision of tackling violence in Baltimore, laying the foundation and building up a new approach to tackling disease of violence that continues to plague our city. These dollars will help us optimize police resources through smart data usage, improve our responses to behavioral health crises so that officers do not have to respond to situations that are better addressed by trained professionals, fulfill consent decree obligations that we have, expand community violence intervention work in partnership with local organizations, and engage with our communities to co-produce public safety, because that's the only way that it's going to happen. These are all things that our residents have called for and items that we are happy to deliver in support of our communities. And then with that, I will say thank you and turn it over first to my good friend, our Senator Ben Cardin. Mr. Senator.
Mayor Scott, first of all, congratulations on your extraordinary leadership here in Baltimore City. It's really, you make our job a lot easier because you are always prepared. Your staff always gets us the information we need. You're prepared to work with our federal congressional delegation to establish priorities and strategies. And as a result of your leadership, we have this announcement today of 9 congressionally directed spending, 9 totaling almost $8 million. But I just really want to back up for 1 second. I am so proud of Team Maryland. I am so proud of our Baltimore City federal delegation. We work as a unit. Now, it'd be very easy for us to use the individual power each of us has and do what we think is our priority. But each of us has said, let's work together as a unit. Let's see what Baltimore needs, and then let's figure out the way that we can get the most from Baltimore by leveraging our abilities on each of our committees. And as a result of that, if you look at what's in the, for example, the American Rescue Plan, you look at what's in the infrastructure bill, you're going to see major wins for Baltimore City because we work together as Team Maryland to help Mayor Scott deal with the issues of Baltimore City. If you look at the omnibus appropriations bills, you're going to see initiatives for Baltimore City because we work together as a team. That's Team Maryland. and we were able to deliver on behalf of Baltimore. So I just want to pause a moment because my colleagues will talk about some of the individual earmarks that we got, but we couldn't have been as successful as we were in getting this broad range of congressional earmarks if it weren't for the fact that we were willing to work together as Team Maryland. And I'm just so proud to be part of this delegation. So yes, we will talk about 9 specific earmarks that we got. We'll talk about how we're going to help the Baltimore City Police Department. They get the largest amount. Commissioner Harrison, our confidence in the way the Baltimore City Police Department can utilize a federal partnership. It will help us in modernizing our technology and record keeping. It will help us with community collaboration. It will help us in dealing with policing in the community. It will help us comply with the consent decree to improve our policing and public safety in Baltimore. We'll talk about how we got money for Baltimore City directly to deal with the proper use of the 911 system. And we'll talk about partnerships with 5 nonprofits that are working with us for public safety. We're working with Living Classrooms, LifeBridge Health, University of Maryland Shock Trauma, Rock of Baltimore, and Marylanders to Prevent Gun Violence. Each of these initiatives are there to help us deal with public safety. In total, it's $7,914,000. That's specifically earmarked for these programs. There will be millions of dollars coming in on other programs in this FY22 appropriation cycle that Baltimore City will benefit from. And we've helped to make sure that those funds are directed to Baltimore City because we have confidence in the leadership of Baltimore, and we have confidence that working together we can deliver for the people of Baltimore City. My partner and the person who serves on the Appropriations Committee in the United States Senate, we talk daily, and he has been laser focused on helping make sure that we deal with the priorities in our state. At the beginning of this term of Congress, Senator Van Hollen and I met with our city delegates, and we put public safety as one of our top priorities. Senator Van Hollen has delivered on that commitment. I'm proud to present to you my colleague in the United States Senate, Senator Chris Van Hollen.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Senator Cardin, and thank you for leading Team Maryland in the United States Congress. It's great to be here with you and with our colleagues, Congressman Rupersberger, Sarbanes, and Mfume. As Senator Cardin said, we do work as a team to try to make sure we coordinate our requests for the benefit of the state of Maryland and the city of Baltimore. Mr. Mayor, thank you for your leadership, and I know we're going to be meeting after this gathering to talk about this next year's efforts. And I'm just going to keep talking here. Okay. All right. So I think we all know that there's no one solution here, but we are working to try to make sure we piece together a series of funds to address the issue of violent crime in Baltimore City. And we all know there's no one answer here. We all know you need a comprehensive approach here. And I appreciate the opportunity to. So I'm going to. I'm going to talk a little bit more about some of the priorities here. Okay, we have funds as. All right. All right, I'm going to. I am going to keep going, as the mayor said. There are funds here for 8 projects, as the Senator Cardin mentioned, because we recognize that we need a comprehensive approach when it comes to Baltimore City. We provided additional funds since 2018 in 3 major categories: more ATF personnel, more U.S. attorneys, as well as more folks for the FBI team. Today, we're talking about these projects that are also based on directing against community violence, and we're happy to join with the mayor in doing that. So I'm not going to go on at length. My colleagues may want to say more. We're happy to address some of the other issues that you're interested in. Let me turn it over now to the next person who's going to be speaking to you. Is it? I want to turn this over to Commissioner Harrison, and I thank him at this time for his stewardship here in the city. Commissioner.
Thank you and good afternoon. I want to give a special thank you to our federal delegation for their hard work in fighting for funding that will go toward public safety initiatives in our city. These funds will prove to be money well spent as the BPD strives to reimagine policing in Baltimore, expand our 911 diversion, expand community collaboration and neighborhood policing plans under our consent decree. These allocated resources will help our department in upgrading our technology, add civilian employees to free up officer time, streamline processes, and increase positive community interactions. All of this and more is how we improve public safety and make our city safer. We all know that the task at hand is much bigger than any one agency. We can't make our neighborhoods safer and improve community relations alone. It takes all of us. And having members from our federal delegation here today, supporting local initiatives is how we continue to work collectively in reducing violent crime in our city. The ongoing support of our federal, state, and local partners shows our city that we are truly all in this together. So I'm especially grateful to all who are here with us today for their tireless effort and commitment to our city. Thank you, and let's get to work. At this time, I'll turn it over to U.S. Representative Dutch Ruplesberger.
All right. Well, first, thank you all for being here. I think we know what our job is, and we're moving forward as a team. Ben talked about team. You know, I grew up in Baltimore City. My family has been here since the 1860s. Baltimore is a great place. Baltimore has tremendous traditions. But we've had some problems lately. And when we have problems, we're going to come together. You know, when you look at the biggest problem and you talk to our constituents, a lot of it's about crime. But it's more than just crime. It's neighborhoods. It's all the positive things that we remember about Baltimore City. And we're coming together with a federal, state, and local team. The mayor's doing a great job. He's working 24/7 a day to try to bring us together, and we're going to make that difference. Coming together like this is what we want. And believe me, throughout the country, a lot of people talk about our delegation and how we work with the leadership of all of us here today. Ben, you do a great job in leading us. Chris, everybody. Now, the issue on earmarks, I'm going to talk about 2 or 3 and what we're going to do and the money that's coming in. You know, we have a program at this point where we're trying to take the police and have them prioritized. Police get a lot of calls that are drug-related, mental health-related, those type of things. And we want those calls to go to the people who can handle them the best. They shouldn't be in the criminal justice system. That'll take a lot off of our police and let them do the job, you know, that they need to do. When the second earmark, and by the way, they are earmarks. They are good. They're directed and they're focused on helping people. The second one is shock trauma. I don't know if you know my background, but Maryland shock trauma saved my life. Dr. Callie talked me into running for office. That's how I got involved, and I've tried to be very loyal to shock trauma. In fact, there's supposed to be, and there is, a shock trauma nurse here today with the shock trauma garb. Where are you? Are you here? Oh, come up here. Very dedicated people. It's the best trauma system in the world. Iraq, Afghanistan, and it keeps growing and growing, and they're a team there. And I tell you, they're working day and night. And I was there for almost a month, and they're like your family. But they are the team that helps other trauma centers throughout the United States. to thank you for all you do. And what this program does is when people are shot and come into shock trauma, they're there maybe for a couple weeks or however it is that being taken care of. Through Tom Scalia, a lot of us worked with him, and when we have the people in bed, and these are tough people, that's when we have a program to bring people in and to try to help them change their lives, try to find them new places to live, try to get them a job. And this program is doing fantastic, and it's being now looked at by other trauma centers throughout the country. And the numbers are there, and we feel very positive. But that's what our shock trauma is about. It's just not about saving people's lives. It's about involving them, getting them back into the community with a dedicated group of people. The other issue that I'm going to talk about basically is education and making sure we have programs, especially for children. And that living classrooms, a lot of those groups. And these are just one of numerous earmarks that have been talked about, and thank you for being here. I yield to Shante Jackson, Director of Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement. Shante.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shante Jackson. I'm the Director of the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement. We all know that violence has been a deep challenge in our city for many years. Generational trauma and disinvestment have disrupted the advancement of our communities and perpetuated the violence that we continue to see today. Mayor Scott's administration is making historic investments to stem the tide of violence across Baltimore City. And because of the support and advocacy of Senator Cardin, Senator Van Hollen, Congressman Sarbanes, and Congressman Ruppersberger, Congressman Nfume, we have an unprecedented opportunity to implement public safety initiatives rooted in community and equity that will have transformational and long-term impacts. You often hear us talk about the co-production of public safety. When we use that phrase, co-production of public safety, it's intentional because we know it takes a village to enact sustainable, accountable, and equitable change. It also takes investment. Investment into the community and hospital-based organizations that are on the ground every single day doing real work in real time. Organizations like ROCA, Marylanders to Prevent Gun Violence, and Living Classrooms. Hospitals like LifeBridge Health and University of Maryland Shock Trauma. The $2.6 million total for nonprofit earmark investment is going to make it possible for these folks to further mobilize Baltimore's community violence intervention ecosystem and save lives. These funds will also further support the partnership between Muncie and the Baltimore Police Department as we work together to implement strategies like neighborhood policing plans and 911 diversion. For those who don't know, neighborhood policing plans engage community members to develop intentional relationships with our law enforcement officers so that together they can address the challenges identified where they live. And 911 diversion helps us alleviate volume out of the law enforcement officers by diverting mental and behavioral health crises calls or low-risk calls so that they can focus on violence prevention and higher risk situations, and residents can get appropriate care for their needs. Baltimore has true partners in our federal delegation, partners that understand that it takes a blended approach. I'm intentionally not saying the word balanced. A blended approach to public safety to truly see change in our city. An approach that simultaneously provides our law enforcement partners with the tools and the systems that they need to grow efficiencies in how they do work, and one that not only enables but empowers residents and community-based organizations to employ prevention and intervention methodologies to reduce violence. We're grateful to the delegation because they recognize the potential in our communities and our priorities to support the work that it's going to take to fully implement our strategies. So I want to thank the federal delegation again and to everyone standing here with us as we work to invest intentionally and strategically to reduce violence in Baltimore City and truly co-produce public safety. We're looking forward to continuing to do this work together. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Representative John Sarbanes.
Thank you very much, Shantae. Mr. Mayor, we are very excited to be with you today. What you see here is the federal delegation, the federal Baltimore delegation, making the intentional decision, as we do year in and year out, to invest in this city, to bet on this city, to invest in this mayor, all the good things that are happening here, and we thank you for your leadership that you're providing every single day. When families are in pain, when communities are in pain, that migrates to violence, and you have to come up with innovative strategies to respond to that pain, to address that violence. And many of the initiatives that we're highlighting today are doing that in a very creative and innovative and forward-thinking way, research-based, all of them. That's what makes it so very, very exciting. I'm pleased to be here to talk specifically about LifeBridge's Community Violence Cessation Program, and Martha Nathanson is joining us from LifeBridge. Thank you, Martha, for what your organization is doing every single day for the city of Baltimore. The idea behind this program, and there's $600,000 coming as part of the dollars we're talking about today to support this program. The idea is to meet people at the point of trauma and then offer them that path forward that can lead to a better life. There are a number of what they call trained hospital responders that LifeBridge will be deploying in order to do that outreach right there in the hospital when people are at that point of trauma and you need to give them a critical opportunity. There'll be about 250 people served directly in this way is what's projected, and then another 1,000 people out in the community that will be connected to that wraparound set of services to make sure that whatever the incident, whatever the situation, whatever the challenge is that brought people to that point of trauma can be addressed in the future, and they can be lifted up, their families lifted up, and the community lifted up. So again, we're here to invest in Baltimore, in this mayor, in his leadership team, in this commissioner, in everybody who is trying to make sure that Baltimore can be the best that it can be. Mr. Mayor, congratulations on leading this partnership. We're proud to be with you. And now I turn it over to a man who's got Baltimore in his heart from day one, Congressman Mfume.
The late and great Paul Sarbanes used to say that everything that can be said has been said. It's just that everyone has not said it. So I'm going to say it again and be deliberately redundant. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for working with this team, and I know I speak on behalf of all of us when I say it's been a good working relationship. I want to thank Senator Van Hollen, Senator Cardin, Congressman Sarbanes, Congressman Ruppersberger, our respective staffs, and others for helping to get us to this point. My role in all of this was to serve as an unofficial whip in the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, the Congressional Black Caucus, and the Congressional Progressive Caucus, representing almost 200 members of the Congress on the Democratic side, to make sure in this case, as was the case last year when we passed the American Rescue Plan, that there are votes in place to carry the day. That was the case also with the infrastructure program. So I want to not be redundant about some of the things you have heard, but rather to make some points about some things that perhaps you have not heard or contemplated. This is a day of great promise, but it also holds great peril. The promise are the things that you heard from my colleagues earlier about how they worked to champion this earmark and that earmark, and how they deliberately worked as a team, all of us together, to get here. That is great promise. It's great promise for the police department, it's great promise for community organizations, and it's great promise for this administration. The peril in all of that is that with all of those resources and all of that money, if we do not make crime our #1 priority every day, every night and in every way, the peril will take place and we will see ourselves treading water. So we've got to make sure on the ground that that is not my priority or yours, but it's got to be all of our priorities. And we have to act like it, and we have to talk about it, and we have to really, really mean it. The promise in all of this is, you heard the great amount of money going to the police commissioner, the police department. That is important. It's for training, it's for officers in the neighborhood. It's to find a way to do policing better. The peril in all of that is that we are still trying to figure out an understaffing for the police department that this commissioner inherited, and perhaps the commissioner before him inherited. That we're over 500 vacancies. Those are boots on the ground, people in the street, officer friendlies at neighborhood organizations, and people really need to see and know. So there's a peril there if we don't do everything we can to help in every effort that's underway now to recruit more officers. There's a promise in the fact that everybody believes that we have got to find a way to make policing better. The peril, though, is that if we run around all day and talk about defund the police, we're not going to go very far at all. There's great promise in this educational system. As a member of the Committee on Education, we got $493 million sent into the Baltimore City public school system last year, and we hope, if all things go well, to match that this year. The peril is that when we look at the grades that are declining more and more, absenteeism, truancy, ghost students, we recognize then that we have a long, long way to go. So again, priority, promise, and peril. And we've got to find a way to get tougher on the things that we have to get tough on. All these good people standing here who've worked so hard to put all this money in place and to operate programs can't really effectively do that unless we pledge ourselves as a city to help in every way we can. We've got to just admit one thing: we are still a very violent city. And the only way to deal with that is to acknowledge it and to work like hell to do something about it. So I'm happy to join my colleagues. I'm happy to be with the commissioner. I'm glad to be with the mayor and all of those community groups that know day in and day out what it's like in neighborhoods that you can't get out of. For the seniors who don't have mobility and are afraid to go to the grocery store. For kids who worry about being hit by a stray bullet. For older people who get killed in their churches and some who get killed in their neighborhoods. We've got to find a way to do more. And we've got to do it by working with the police department. And by the way, nobody hates a bad cop more than a good cop. Nobody. And we ought to recognize that to the extent we can, police training and police reform are appropriate, and we ought to talk about it. So I went off script, way off, because this is what keeps me up at night. I'm tired of going to teenage funerals. I'm tired of consoling mothers at these funerals. I'm tired of looking at the number of burials that run by me in the street and week after week see this situation get worse. The people here give everything they have to make a difference, everything. And the only thing we ask back now is for persons out there who feel the same way, know that you are not alone, that we're all in it together. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody. We'll take a few questions, Senators, Congressman, if that's okay with you guys. Abigail, you first? Abijoy, sorry. It's been a long day, Abijoy. I'm sorry.
I understand. It's all good. So we've seen this week where several brazen crimes have been caught on camera. Explain to us a little bit more about how these funds will be beneficial in stopping people from getting to that point.
So when you think about this, is what you're talking about in these earmarks are really about multiple different ways of doing that, right? We're talking about helping folks that have been, but preventing. When you're talking about dealing with mental health in a different way, behavioral health in a different way, when you see the acts of violence that are happening and you know that people aren't right in their right minds to do something so brazen out, if we had worked with that person many, many times before, how many other times have they interacted with government or some organization who simply did not have the resources or the ability or the training to help them, that we could have prevented another act of violence from happening if our police department is actually able to have more time to respond, to be proactive, to be patrolling, to be walking in communities like my very own that had one of those incidents yesterday. Then we could see less of these. But when we are sending our police officers out to behavioral health calls, when we're sending our police officers out to substance abuse calls, something that they are not trained to deal with, when we have the best behavioral health, substance abuse professionals in the world, in this city that has the best health and mental health institutions in the world, that's how we have to evolve, and that's what our wonderful congressional delegation is helping us to do as we divert those things away so that we can focus our police officers on the things that our residents want them focused on.
Okay, and I wonder if you guys can also address the funding that will be coming to assist the police department in getting up to speed with the consent decree, especially technologically.
Yep, I'll let Senator Cardin talk about that in the commission.
Yeah, we've had a meeting with the Department of Justice as to how they can help support in a stronger way the joint task force that works in Baltimore City on violent crimes and works with the police commissioner. So we're looking at additional personnel from the federal government and additional ways in which we can get Baltimore qualified for additional funds. So those conversations have taken place. All that is to implement the consent decree. We're one of the cities that has the consent decree. There will be efforts in this appropriation cycle to do what we did in the last appropriation cycle, and that is to provide some special assistance to those jurisdictions that are under consent decrees.
Commissioner, if you could just elaborate a little bit, I want more details on exactly how this will help with the technological aspect, how this funding will help.
Well, you bring up a very good point. Consent decrees are typically unfunded mandates. And this one was no different. It was an unfunded mandate. And what you see here is our federal delegation asking us, what do you need to help you come into compliance with the consent decree? To create a 21st century police department. And they have gone to their colleagues in the Congress and the Senate and have now brought back funds to help us improve the technology, improve the processes, all of which helps us become a compliant police department to get in compliance and then ultimately out of this consent decree faster. And records management is a classic example of us using a records management system that was 20, 30 years old. Now we have a brand new one that brings us out of the paper age into the digital age. What you see is a delivery on a promise based off of an ask that the federal government would help us with this consent decree, not just to pay for it, but to help us make all the improvements we need in our police department. The goal is to get out of this consent decree.
Alexa?
I have a question for the commissioner.
Go ahead, Alexa.
Okay. How will this funding, if at all, help you in your crime plan, specifically this summer?
Thank you. Every opportunity for the police department to free up time so that other professionals who perhaps are unfunded could get funded so that we could free up the time to, like the mayor said, to focus on being visible, which creates deterrence so that we can deter crime, so we can apprehend people who commit crime and focus on the things people want police focused on. Every opportunity to divert calls away and to offset those to other professionals who rightfully should handle it, that's a way for the department to increase its capacity, its speed, and how we, number one, patrol and prevent, and then ultimately hold people accountable for crime.
Are those the key differences in your summer crime plan compared to
Well, that's
other ones?
that's always going to be the case for the summer crime plan and for the crime plan in general. It's to free up officer time to be laser focused, to make sure we're doing what citizens want us to do, and to be more present, more visible, to prevent more crime while we hold people accountable when we catch them for committing crime. All right?
Kenzie?
Hello. This question is for members of the congressional delegation, anyone. Looking at the money coming from the federal government, is there any oversight to ensure that the money going to some of these nonprofits that's earmarked for them, to ensure that the accountability is there, those measures are there, that the money is being spent appropriately?
Sure. The answer is yes. These are vetted. First of all, they're vetted at several levels. I mean, they're vetted before the funds go to make sure that these organizations are in a position to use them wisely. In the case, for example, of the 911 diversion program, Those are coming to the city, to the police department. We know they have a system in place, and we will continue to work with them to monitor the use of those funds. So the short answer is yes. They're scrutinized before the monies are allocated, and we'll continue to oversee them as they go forward.
And the same thing for the nonprofits.
This is because I think there's some misconceptions on these congressional earmarks. There are strict requirements for every applicant who wants to get a congressional earmark. And as Senator Van Hollen said, it is scrutinized not just by our offices, but by the appropriating staff's offices to make sure they comply with those requirements. There's then follow-up to make sure that what is said is going to be done is done. So there's oversight in the beginning, during the process, and we have strict rules as to who can qualify for these funds.
Okay. And when it comes to looking at just reading through some of them, I know ROCA, the Community Violence Intervention Ecosystem, I'm assuming some of this money is going towards helping expand that. We talked about that as well a couple of weeks ago. The Safe Streets program is getting some money to expand as well. Is there specific oversight for that as well? We know that the data shows it's, hit or miss depending on which location. So can you justify putting more money into these programs?
I'll take that. The answer is yes, because it saves lives each and every day. And you've heard from them about the accountability measures that are there. This is a program that several levels of government has funded now for more than a decade. So we know the successes there. We know the accountability is there. Thank you, everybody.